The night I heard my daughter's boss laughing about the plan that would destroy her career, I was holding a trash bag in one hand and a mop handle in the other. That was what he saw, anyway. An old janitor. Gray hair, bent shoulders, cheap navy uniform, plastic name tag that said Earl. To men like Victor Lang, people like me were not really people. We were background noise. The man who emptied the bins, the man who cleaned coffee stains from conference room carpets, the man who stepped aside when executives walked through the hallway without looking down. So when Victor leaned back in his glass office at 10:18 p.m. and said, "By Monday, Amelia Brooks will be finished in this industry," he did not lower his voice. He did not check the doorway. He did not wonder whether the old man wiping fingerprints from the wall outside might know that name. Amelia Brooks was my daughter. And Lang & Mercer, the company where he planned to bury her, was the company I had built with my own two hands 31 years earlier. My name is Earl Brooks. I am 68 years old, widowed, and for the last 6 months, I have been working nights as a janitor in the headquarters of the business I founded. Nobody knew, not Victor, not the employees, not even most of the board. Years ago, after my wife Margaret got sick, I stepped away from the company. I sold controlling interest to investors, kept a quiet minority stake, and disappeared from the front page. I did not want speeches. I did not want plaques. I wanted time with my wife while there was still time left. After she passed, the company changed. The name stayed. The building stayed. The logo I had sketched on a napkin in 1992 still hung above the lobby doors. But the soul was different. People whispered in elevators. Good workers kept their heads down. Managers smiled upward and kicked downward. And Victor Lang, the new executive vice president, moved through the halls like a man who believed kindness was a weakness successful people outgrew. Then Amelia got promoted. She was 39, sharp, honest, and stubborn in the way her mother had been. She worked in compliance, which meant she read the details other people hoped nobody would notice. For months, she had been investigating irregular vendor payments tied to Victor's division. She never told me much. "Confidential, Dad," she would say. I respected that, but I also knew my daughter. I knew when she was carrying something heavy. I knew when her smile was there for my comfort, not hers. So when I heard Victor say her name that night, I stopped moving. Inside his office, 2 other men laughed. One of them asked, "What if she fights it?" Victor's answer came smoothly, "She won't. Not after HR sees the file we're giving them." My fingers tightened around the trash bag. "What file?" the other man asked. Victor chuckled. "The one that proves Amelia leaked confidential records, harassed a vendor, and tried to cover her tracks." The hallway seemed to go silent around me, because I knew that tone. I had heard it before from men who did not fear consequences because they believed they owned the room, the witnesses, and the truth. Victor stood and walked toward the glass wall, his back to me. "By Friday morning," he said, "she'll either resign quietly or we'll make sure no company touches her again." Then he laughed, and for the first time in 6 months, I stopped pretending to be just the janitor. For a few seconds, I stayed exactly where I was. That was the first rule I ever learned in business, long before the suits and contracts and boardrooms. When people reveal who they are, do not interrupt them. Let them keep talking. Victor's office door was half open. The cleaning cart stood beside me. One squeaky wheel turned toward the wall. From where I stood, I could see his reflection in the dark window behind his desk. Expensive suit, perfect hair, a smile that never reached his eyes. Beside him stood Daniel Price from HR and a younger manager named Colin Webb, who looked nervous enough to know what they were doing was wrong, but ambitious enough to do it anyway. Daniel flipped through a folder. "We need the timestamps to line up," he said. "If Amelia can prove she was not logged in when those files moved, this falls apart." Victor waved him off. "She won't have access long enough to prove anything. IT disables her credentials Friday morning. Security walks her out before lunch." Colin shifted uncomfortably. "And the vendor?" Victor smiled. "Already handled. He'll say, Amelia pressured him for documents, then threatened him when he refused. We give HR the complaint, legal the access logs, and the board a clean story." A clean story. That phrase nearly made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because dirty men love clean stories. I had built that company after losing my first job at 40. Back then, it was just me, Margaret, a rented office above a bakery, and 3 clients who trusted me because I answered the phone myself. I hired single mothers, veterans, kids fresh out of college, people other firms overlooked. I used to tell every manager the same thing. A company is not built by the loudest man in the room. It is built by the people he forgets to thank. Now one of those loud men was standing in my building, planning to ruin my daughter because she had found something he wanted buried. Victor poured himself a drink from the cabinet behind his desk. After she's gone, he said, we clean up the vendor issue and move the contract through before the audit committee wakes up. That was the real reason. Not a personality conflict, not an HR complaint, a contract. Amelia had found something tied to money, and Victor was using her career as a shovel to bury it. My first instinct was to walk in, say my name, and watch the blood drain from his face. But age teaches you the danger of satisfying moments. A dramatic entrance feels good for 10 seconds. Evidence lasts longer. So I bent down slowly, tied the trash bag, and rolled my card away like I had heard nothing. Inside my chest, my heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. At the end of the hall, I stepped into the supply closet, closed the door, and pulled out my phone. There was only one person I trusted enough to call first. Marjorie, I said when she answered. She had been my company's first attorney, retired now, 72 years old, mean as winter when she needed to be. Earl, she said, it's almost 11. I need to know how fast you can get an emergency board meeting. There was a pause. Then her voice changed. What happened? I looked through the little supply room window toward Victor's glowing office. They're trying to destroy Amelia. Marjorie did not ask if I was sure. Good lawyers know that when an old man calls that late, using that tone, the fire has already started. Then listen carefully, she said. Do not confront him yet. I wasn't planning to. Good, because if Victor is framing your daughter, we do not need anger. We need a trap. I looked down at my janitor's name tag. For the first time all night, I smiled, because Victor Lang had built his whole plan around one belief, that the old man cleaning his hallway was invisible, and tomorrow, I was going to let him keep believing it. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 5:40. That was one advantage of being invisible. Nobody questions the janitor showing up early. Nobody wonders why he is in the copy room, why he is near the executive floor, why he is emptying trash that is already empty. They just step around him. Victor arrived at 7:12, wearing a charcoal suit and the expression of a man who had already won. He walked past me in the lobby without looking up from his phone. Morning, Earl, the receptionist said. Victor did not even blink. He had heard my fake name dozens of times and never once cared enough to ask who I was. At 8:03, Amelia called me. Dad, she said, trying to sound normal. Are you busy? I could hear the strain immediately. What happened? She was quiet for a second. Something's wrong at work. I leaned on my mop handle near the service elevator. What kind of wrong? I got a calendar invite from HR. No agenda. Just me, Daniel Price, and someone from legal. My throat tightened. What time? 10:30. That gave Victor 2.5 hours. I wanted to tell her everything right then. I wanted to say her boss was setting her up, that her father was 20 floors below her wearing a janitor's uniform, that the company she thought had forgotten its founder still had one old ghost walking the halls. But Marjorie's warning sat heavy in my mind. Do not confront him yet. So I said the hardest thing a father can say when his child is walking into danger. Stay calm. Do not sign anything. Do not resign. If they accuse you of something, ask for every allegation in writing. Amelia's voice dropped. Dad, why are you saying it like that? I closed my eyes, because I know how bad people behave when they are afraid of the truth. At 9:20, I found the first piece. Victor's assistant, Jenna, tossed a stack of shredded paper bags into the disposal room. Most people think shredders erase evidence. They do not. They only make evidence inconvenient. The bag had jammed halfway down the chute. I pulled it free, and there, stuck between paper strips, was the corner of an email Victor had printed before destroying. Only 3 lines were readable. Vendor exposure unacceptable. Brooks must be removed before audit review. Use HR complaint as cover. I photographed it and sent it to Marjorie. Her reply came 1 minute later. Keep going. At 9:57, Colin Webb found me near the break room. He looked pale. You're Earl, right? That's what the tag says. He glanced over his shoulder. I saw you outside Victor's office last night. I kept my face blank. Cleaning crew sees a lot of offices. His hands shook. I didn't know they were going to fake logs. I thought it was just pressure, corporate politics. I said nothing. He swallowed. They asked me to change access timestamps. Make it look like Amelia downloaded files after hours. There it was, the missing piece. I looked at him carefully. Can you prove that? Colin looked toward Victor's office, then back at me. If I tell the truth, I'm finished. I leaned closer. Son, if you help them frame an innocent woman, you should be. His face crumpled. For a moment, he was not an ambitious young manager anymore. He was just a frightened man, realizing the ladder he was climbing was leaning against a burning wall. At 10:26, Amelia stepped into the HR conference room. At 10:29, Marjorie texted me. Board members joining remotely in 15 minutes. At 10:30, Victor walked in smiling. And I pushed my cleaning cart toward the executive conference hall, still wearing my name tag, still carrying my mop, still letting him think the old janitor had no idea what was about to happen. At 10:33, Daniel Price began reading from a folder like he was announcing a weather report. Amelia Brooks. This meeting concerns serious allegations involving unauthorized access to confidential vendor records, harassment of an external partner, and misuse of company systems. Amelia sat across from him with her hands folded in her lap. Victor stood near the window, pretending to look disappointed. That was his performance. Not anger, not triumph, disappointment. It made him look clean. Amelia, Victor said softly, I want you to understand how painful this is for all of us. From the hallway, I watched through the narrow glass panel beside the conference room door. My daughter did not cry. That made me proud. But I saw her face go pale. Daniel slid a paper across the table. If you resign today, we can avoid formal escalation. Amelia looked down at the document. Resignation agreement. Non-disparagement clause. Waiver of claims. They were not just trying to fire her. They were trying to silence her. She lifted her eyes. I want the allegations in writing. Victor's smile tightened. Daniel cleared his throat. That may not be necessary if you cooperate. I want them in writing. Good girl, I thought. At 10:41, the screen at the end of the conference room flickered on. Victor turned. Daniel looked confused. Then Marjorie Whitcomb appeared on the screen, silver hair pulled back, glasses low on her nose, expression sharp enough to cut steel. Good morning, she said. Victor froze. Marjorie? Behind her, 6 more video windows appeared. Board members. The room went silent. Daniel stood so quickly his chair rolled backward. What is this? Marjorie smiled without warmth. An emergency board oversight session. Victor's voice changed. This is inappropriate. No, Marjorie said. Framing a compliance officer before an audit is inappropriate. This is procedure. Amelia stared at the screen, then at Victor. What is she talking about? That was when I opened the door. Every eye in the room turned toward me. For one perfect second, Victor looked irritated. Not afraid, just annoyed that the janitor had wandered into an executive meeting. Get out, he snapped. I stepped inside with my mop in one hand. No, his face hardened. I said get out. Marjorie leaned toward her camera. Victor, I would be very careful how you speak to Mr. Brooks. Daniel's mouth opened slightly. Colin, who had been standing near the wall, looked like he might faint. Victor blinked. Mr. Brooks? I took off my plastic name tag and placed it on the table. Then I looked at my daughter. Amelia was staring at me like the floor had disappeared beneath her. Dad? I nodded once. Victor whispered, no. I turned to him. Yes. For the first time since I had started cleaning those halls, Victor Lang really looked at me. Not at the uniform, not at the mop, at me. And I watched the math happen behind his eyes. Brooks, Amelia Brooks, Earl Brooks, the old founder whose portrait had been removed from the lobby during the renovation because Victor said it made the company feel dated. Marjorie spoke again. For the record, Earl Brooks remains a minority shareholder with special audit rights under the original operating agreement. Victor said nothing, so I did. At 10:18 last night, I heard you say my daughter would be finished by Monday. At 9:20 this morning, I recovered part of a destroyed email referencing the use of an HR complaint as cover, and at 9:57, Mr. Webb told me he was asked to alter access logs. Colin closed his eyes. Daniel looked at Victor. Amelia slowly stood. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. You tried to frame me? Victor reached for control one last time. Amelia, you don't understand the larger situation. She looked at the resignation agreement on the table. Then she pushed it back toward him. No, Victor, she said. I think I finally do. Victor Lang did not leave the company that morning in handcuffs. Real life is rarely that dramatic. He left with 2 security officers beside him, a cardboard box in his hands, and every person on the executive floor pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. That was enough. By noon, his access had been suspended. Daniel Price was placed on administrative leave. The vendor contract was frozen. The board authorized a full audit. Colin Webb gave a signed statement, shaking so badly that Marjorie had to remind him twice to breathe. And Amelia, my daughter, sat alone in the empty conference room, staring at the resignation agreement they had tried to force her to sign. I stepped inside quietly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up at me. You were the janitor? I gave a small shrug. Part-time. Her eyes filled with tears, but she laughed once through them. Dad, I know. You built this company. I helped build it. And you let them treat you like that? I looked through the glass wall at the employees moving carefully through the hallway, whispering in corners, checking on one another. I wanted to see what kind of place it had become when nobody thought anyone important was watching. Amelia looked down. And? I took a long breath. It forgot who built it. That hurt to say. For months, I had walked those floors at night, collecting coffee cups and crumpled memos, seeing the company I loved through the eyes of the people who cleaned up after everyone else. I learned more with a mop in my hand than I ever had from a quarterly report. I learned who said thank you. I learned who stepped aside. I learned who thought a title made them taller. And I learned that my daughter had more courage than most of the men who tried to bury her. In the weeks that followed, the audit uncovered exactly what Victor had feared. Inflated vendor invoices, hidden payments, internal emails that should have ended careers years earlier. The board asked me to return as interim chairman. I said no at first, then Amelia asked me a question. If you walk away again, who teaches them what this company was supposed to be? So I came back. Not forever, just long enough to turn the lights on. We restored the founder's employee fund Margaret had started before she got sick. We replaced managers who ruled by fear. We gave the cleaning crew proper benefits, new equipment, and names on their badges that people were expected to learn. As for Amelia, she was offered Victor's position. She almost refused, not because she was afraid, because she wanted to earn it without anyone thinking her father handed it to her. The board solved that quickly. They voted unanimously, without me in the room. 6 months later, I walked into that same building on a Friday afternoon. Not in a janitor's uniform this time, just an old man visiting his daughter at work. In the lobby, a young analyst held the elevator door for a cleaner pushing a cart. After you, ma'am, he said. I smiled. Small things tell you when a place is healing. Upstairs, Amelia was standing in Victor's old office, sleeves rolled up, laughing with her team around a table covered in reports. When she saw me, she crossed the room and hugged me in front of everyone. No shame, no secrets. Just my daughter, standing in the place they had tried to take from her. That night, before I left, I picked up my old plastic name tag from her desk. Earl, Amelia smiled. Keeping it? I nodded. To remember what people reveal when they think you don't matter. Because that is the truth I learned late in life. Power does not show itself in the corner office. It shows itself in how you treat the person emptying the trash. And a company is never destroyed by the quiet people holding it together. It is destroyed by arrogant men who forget they are being watched. If you have ever been underestimated, ignored, or treated like you did not matter, tell us in the comments. Do you think Earl did the right thing by staying quiet until Victor exposed himself? If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps and encourages us to keep bringing you new stories like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.